Welcome to the next edition of The Promising Creative, where I am really blessed to have
Preye Crooks.
And today I wanted to get him down and get his story about himself, the things he does, and all things him. So
Sweet.
I wanted to start off with, I think you're from Kingston, right?
I was born in St. John's Wood.
Okay.
Grew up in Kingston. Moved out of there just after uni. Yeah, so
Okay.
Kingston was the biggest chunk of my life.
I went Kingston once years ago.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, it's really nice out there.
Yeah, it's not bad.
How was Kingston for you growing up?
It's all right, you know. I always really, I want to be very clear that I'm very grateful. It was a nice part of town. I was very lucky, as we just said before we started, to have an old man that had played football. So we were in a nice house. It wasn't very diverse, and that was an interesting thing for me growing up. But I would be a very, very spoilt brat to say I wasn't grateful to be in that part of town. So yeah.
Yeah, Kingston is it's an interesting area. It's
Yeah.
so far from where I am here.
Man,
So
far from everywhere.
So like you're deep South London.
Yeah.
What, really?
If even South London, I think the postcode was KT1, so I was
Okay.
just outside of London. But like my school was in Hammersmith, so I was kind of in that southwest Londonish area. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
And so, because you went up to, so you studied.
Yeah.
And then was there, when you were studying, like, because when I was studying, I was thinking about what I wanted to be. And what I wanted to be was, I just wanted to be in music. I didn't know anything else. I remember I've got a book upstairs where I wrote when I left school that I wanted to be in music. But I didn't know how, what. And I didn't, first of all, go into music, funny enough. I just went into a job where it kind of kept my parents happy.
Yeah.
Because they were like I was first generation, so they were like, my dad was like, you got to do something that, you can just make money no matter what. And I was like, okay, Dad, whatever you want. So off I went and I studied to do hairdressing. But when you were growing up, was there a certain job or was there a certain thing that you wanted to be?
I always wanted to do music, to be honest, not to be cliche. From about 14, before that I wanted to be a footballer, failed. So 14, it was music. At 18, I did a little internship at a bank because it kept my mum happy. I hated it. And as soon as I came out of uni, it took me like 3 weeks to get into Sony. And then I've literally been in the same job ever since. I would say dodging getting fired for the past 8 years, basically.
And what was you doing? What did you major at uni? And
Politics.
Politics, okay.
Yeah, subject I was least bad at. Made my mum happy. Went to Cambridge Uni, made her happier. But the whole thing from 16 was how can I get into Columbia Records? I had that in my head as this like amazing record label with amazing artists and history, and that kind of started from 16.
Okay. So you managed to get a job there when you came back?
Yeah.
And what was you doing at that point? Was it A&Ring or?
A&R, so I started as an intern. I started as work experience, then an intern, then you get the full-time gig. But then the job was just to be at every gig in and around London, sometimes England, and report to the bosses kind of once a week on what was happening and what we felt was the most exciting new music. And that was it. And I was on every single night bus, 5-6 nights a week. I loved it. I got a free ticket with a Sony email to go and see whoever I wanted. I'd go, my date night would be at a gig. My night out with the boys would be at a gig. I just loved it. So it wasn't work to me. I just wanted to find the next big thing.
Okay. And I guess when you're kind of living the dream and it doesn't feel like work, did you find that you excelled? Was your acceleration in that job quicker?
I think so. I was so I've always been super hungry. I'm ambitious. I want to win. And I like to think that anywhere I was, I'd be working 10 out of 10. But with this job in particular, I just loved it. I remember saying to my business partner, because I got festivals, which I'm sure we'll talk about as well, but I remember saying to my business partner at like 22 years old, I was like, if our job is just to go out and meet everybody, then we are going to meet everybody. And like it took us like 2-3 years until I felt like I had a really good network of people in the music industry, and then I've just grown from there. But we both loved every second of it.
I guess, so I know we are going to touch on this, but let's just touch on it now. So
yeah.
You started a festival, but you didn't start a festival, you started an event.
Yeah.
And I guess like everything comes from the love of music.
Yeah.
Like, that's why we do it.
100%.
We do it just because we love music.
Yeah.
And I think because you're passionate and you've got drive, you always seem to do better.
Yeah.
Like, people say to me, what is it, what should I do? And I'm like, just do what you love.
Yeah.
If you can find what you love, you
help.
can make money out of it, you'll do better. 100%. So tell me a little bit about that journey and what, for the love of the music, even though there's a soundtrack that says for the love of the music, but tell me a bit more about where that came from and how it started. And
it's a funny story, which is, I always say to people, it was the first day of Cambridge, there was a big freshers fair where you could go and sign up to all of your courses, classes, and I was doing the rounds and I signed up to the football team. I signed up maybe to there was a gym club or like that. And that was it. There wasn't really anything else going for me. And I met this guy who was a Cambridge local called Will. He'd been at Manchester Uni before. He'd been working at warehouse projects. He'd come back down to Cambridge and he was looking to start club nights. And he met me and he was like, look, I just want to put on club nights that in some way, shape or form resemble warehouse projects. Because everything at Cambridge at the time was Britney Spears, Whitney Houston, no disrespect to those guys. Yeah, but it was very specific what it was. Yeah. And so it wasn't even that clever an idea, to be honest, and I'm sure he'll say it too, but he just wanted to put on something that was a little bit more relevant to what 18, 19, 20-year-olds were listening to at the time. So I was kind of this super keen kid, loved music, and he was saying to me I could go to all my friends and sell tickets for £2 to come and listen to Tiny Temper or Tinch or whatever it was at the time, Skepta. And I was like, yeah. So by day 2, I was tied up with him. And I think day 4, we did our first night. He did all the operational stuff. He knew the venue because he was a Cambridge local. He just needed somebody to help him infiltrate the uni. And that's how it started. And every week that went by, I got more and more interested in it. And he kind of, he promoted me basically to work alongside him.
And you knew straight away.
I loved it.
You were like, okay.
I loved it. It was a no-brainer to me. I liked the music. Yeah. It was a social activity. Yeah. I met more people. It was fun. Yeah. Free drink at the club on the night out. To me, I just was like, obviously, I'm going to do this. So yeah, almost immediately I started uni. It was, I think I did my first club night before I did my first lecture. And at the time, no idea or knowledge that it was going to turn into anything. I wanted to find my thing at uni, and that was my thing.
Did it ever impact your studying? Because sometimes, obviously, the more you party, when you're doing events and you're quite sucked into the moment of what you're trying to create, did you find that's suffering a little bit that side, or did it swing left a bit too much, and then you were like, right, I have to reel it in, or
not really? I remember I said this to my mum, and in my first year, I said I want to get a 2-1, mum. I said I don't want to go for a first because I know how much work that requires, and it will take away from my football, which at the time I was trying to get into the Cambridge first team, and it will take away from this club thing, which I think is growing. And so I said I'm gonna do the exact amount of work required to get me a solid 2-1, and everything outside of that I'm gonna devote to getting. I think when you're in the Cambridge first team, it's called a Cambridge Blue. You get a nice blue jacket, all that rubbish. You play against Oxford in the final, and I was obsessed with that, and I was obsessed with this club night Creem. And my mum was like, she was like, all right, as long as you're aware of that. And I guess I set my time really diligently to work, and outside of that, do my other stuff. And yeah, just about got a 2-1, yeah.
How do you segment your time? How did you segment your time? What was it? Was it written down? Was it mental? Was you like, right, I'm going to just map out what I'm doing, and I'm going to... Or was it just like, I'm going to go by the skin of my, my pants. I'm just going to keep going and see what happens? Yeah,
I wish I could say that I had a beautiful diary. I just think I knew if I had 80 tickets to sell in a week, an essay to hand in, and 3 football training sessions a week, I would not be out on the nights where I didn't have to be out because I knew I had a night that I had to run at the end of the week. I had training in the afternoons. I would do my essays in the morning. I just worked out a way to get them all done and felt it. And as that would change each week, I'd always be conscious of doing what needed to be done to get to the end of the week and achieve those goals.
So you're doing events.
Yeah.
You're studying.
Yeah.
Right. So it's all happening. It's all going off. At what point did that start to become... Was there at any point where the event started to get more and more stronger? Or was that only happened when you left uni? You went into the festival, you started the festival. Obviously, you started the festival after you left uni.
Yeah. Well, no.
Or was it just before?
Year. Second year out of 3, we started it.
Okay.
So the story was the night was for Cambridge Uni. We did that for the first year. And in the second year, we realised that Cambridge Uni is not the place where 40% of the kids want to listen to this type of music. It was 10% max, right? So we were selling 300-400 tickets a week, probably weren't getting past that. And the club was only 300-400 caps, so it was full, but there was no growth or way to scale it. So we started selling tickets to the other uni in Cambridge called Anglo-Ruskin. Then we started selling tickets to the locals. And so on a Tuesday night, it'd be local night, Wednesday night, Anglo-Ruskin, Thursday night, Cambridge Uni. And then at that point, we realised that we had all these different networks within Cambridge, and wouldn't it be cool to bring them all together for one event? Which hadn't been done before, really, because I don't know if it's the same in other uni towns, but like everyone's quite sectioned off. The Cambridge Uni kids just do Cambridge Uni things, and Anglo-Ruskin were the same. So once we had those networks in all of those, I guess, different verticals of the city or the town, we said, let's just do an event in a park, 700 cap, mixture of demographics, and that was the first year, and from there we realised there was growth.
Okay, is that when you labelled it? You named it the name that you have now?
Strawberries and Creem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the club night was called Creem. Terrible name. Represented Cambridge. Represents everything about music. And then Strawberries and Creem were just like an easy thing just to add on for the festival. Yeah.
And then was it still the guy that you'd set it up with originally, or
he's still here?
Still
Saw the photo this morning. It's the exact same team that we started.
Okay.
So that first year, we did 700 people in the park. We put David Rodigan, Shy FX. It was like a drum and bass infused festival orientated around black music, very loose but just good fun. We based it on we spent a lot of time at other unis in the country. So we'd been to Manchester, we'd been to Bristol, and we'd seen that sound was really growing with kids that age, and that was fine. And then the next year, which I guess was like a bit of a watershed moment for us, was we booked Skepta for a very, very good price at the time. He definitely charges a lot more now, as he should. But I think it was about 2-3 weeks before he put out That's Not Me and Shut Down, which was like a big moment in the UK for grime and UK rap music. And then Kanye brought him out of the Brits. And we were looking at it and we were like, oh, he's never going to come to our show now. But he did. And we sold 2,500 tickets that year, up from 600. And as soon as that happened, that was the year I was leaving uni. I was like, we want to keep this going and we're going to come back and come to Cambridge and keep it working.
And it stayed up there because it's kind of, where is it now? Is it still in Cambridge or?
In Cambridge, year 8, yeah. We've taken this year off because we're working on 1 or 2 surprises. But yeah, 8 years back to back. It's moved site within Cambridge 2 or 3 times just because we've grown. But I think as of last year, we did 2 days, 12,000 on the Saturday, about 7,000 on the Sunday. And yeah, super, super proud.
How does that, because that's really, like, doing events is stressful. People think it's like, it's really glamorous. And there are, I think, moments when you're doing the event and it's on and it's happening that you get that kind of electric buzz. I don't know how you explain it because it's something that you look over the crowd and something happens to you and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. But before that, the trials and tribulations and the doubt, oh my God, is it going to be filled or what's going to... How do you go about dressing those in your head or with your friends or when you're putting on your like... Because obviously the break-even point is very high and the profit is always at the top end of the numbers. What is your process in your head when you're going through that?
Well, firstly, I hate it. It's such a weird business model because, and we didn't realize, like, all of the stuff that we've learned, we never knew at the beginning for obvious reasons because we weren't doing it for profit. We weren't doing it to have a massive business or just a business in itself. So the first thing that's really confused me is we spend all year working for one weekend. If it starts raining on that weekend, it affects everything. Or, if there's one mistake or one slip up, you've got the whole rest of the year to kind of be upset about it. So it's pressure. It's definitely adrenaline. You're so desperate for it to go well because you've spent so long visualizing and working on it. But in answer to your question of how we handle it, I think I'm really lucky to have a team of 8 of us who have been there from day one, who I would, I'd go to war with. And it's quite funny. The festival kind of opens at 12 o'clock every year. And at like 11:59, we all get together in a little huddle. And I won't see them again for 12 hours because everybody is just running across this site, putting out fires, making sure guests are happy. But I 1000% trust them. And for that reason, I feel a little bit calmer going into the battlefield.
Have you ever had self-doubt? like, do you ever got to a point you're like, oh my God, actually, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
What's going on? Like,
This morning. Yeah, all the time, particularly with festivals, because you look at the big festivals at 80,000 cap, 90,000, and how do you get to that? You know, and you look at the infrastructure that I don't want to name any, but a lot of those festivals have. They're owned by big conglomerates. You know, they're owned by bodies where they can book artists to play all 4 festivals at the same time. It's hard. You can't really compete in a lot of senses. So yeah, doubt all the time. I think we were just always really, at the same time, very confident that we had a little niche in our part of the country that we could bring a good audience to. And we've stayed true to that. We stayed true to the brand, I guess, that we started 8 years ago is exactly the same as it is now in terms of the values and the ethics and the team and the people that we hire. And that I've got confidence in. So that I use to counteract the very frequent self-doubt that comes about.
And do you ever sit down and like have a bit of a chat with yourself about your self-doubt, or do you just reach out? Like, what's your coping mechanism?
I've got a very, very, very fantastic other half. He has to hear me talk out my problems. I'm not the best at it, and I've been super lucky to meet someone that I feel comfortable in doing that with. And otherwise, I'm with the team. Whatever self-doubts I have, they often also share. And I found that communication really helpful. I think when I was younger, I was so anti talking about my feelings, showing stress. But I think it's important to be transparent and honest with yourself, and it leads to more progress. So yeah, I'm super lucky to have, as I said, that team that I trust in my life and my missus.
And then obviously it's had an investment, or it's had half purchase, or
Sony.
What does that look like? How was that? And how did that come about? I mean, Did that come about because you were in Sony, or you were within the kind of sphere and you're like, look, they're seeing what you're doing, and you're like, come on then, like, get involved with what I'm doing.
What it was. I was at Sony. All of the team loved the fact that I was at Sony. It was helping us because I was developing relationships with artists, with agents. I was able to say, look, we've got this festival. It's only 3,000 people in Cambridge, but it's good. We had Skepta last year. Do you know what I mean? So that was all starting to tie in to, I guess, my personal brand of what I was doing. I was doing A&R, but I was also doing festivals. And I kept saying to Sony, I've got this thing. It's not massive, but it's there. And, you know, is there a way that we can book Sony artists on that stage? But Sony, who I love, they're my only employer. I won't speak badly of them. But I guess you've got to get to a certain size for them to take interest. So I think we were at the 8,000 capacity point. I can't remember what year, 2018, 2019. And I remember that being the first year where I knew for free that the 8 of us running that festival could not control a crowd bigger than 8,000. There was no incidents. There was nothing that went wrong. But behind closed doors, I think there were too many things that could have gone wrong for us to ever want to take that risk again.
Yeah.
So we were all super clear. Like, we didn't even have a discussion about it. We were like, we need some help in terms of the structure and the funding and being able to afford the correct security and the correct infrastructure. So did the run around, spoke to all the people who own festivals. But by chance, Universal, who are Sony's, Tottenham Arsenal.
Yeah, they're buying for fun.
Yeah, exactly. They own festivals.
Yeah.
They own 12. So they were already up and running in this space in a way that Sony weren't. And they reached out, or we reached out, I can't remember. A conversation started. And I kind of said to Sony, I'm on your doorstep. I love it here. We know the team. You know my guys know your guys. Is there a conversation to be had here? And in fairness to Sony, they were super open to it. They're growing as an entertainment company. It's not just about signing artists. They're signing podcast companies. They're signing festivals or buying festivals. And yeah, we got into it with them, and just like that, they came on as a joint partner.
Amazing. That must have been a buzz.
It was wicked, man. I mean, the coolest thing about it was bringing all of my squad into that building that I'd been in for 5 years. So I go to Sony in the morning at 8 a.m. and I can do the first 7 hours doing A&R, and then I'll just pop up to the 6th floor and see the boys who are all up there doing the 2 festivals we've got now. And that was wicked, and bringing everybody under the Sony umbrella. But yeah, it's exciting. They've been great. They've given us kind of freedom to be creative and to grow the festivals as we want. They allowed us to start another festival.
Tell me about that quickly.
So that's called the Cambridge Club.
Okay.
And yeah, again, another weird story. We would obviously we would do the festival, Strawberries and Cream, on a Saturday. We'd wake up on Sunday, we would clean all the, the condoms and the laughing gas canisters, whatever. We'd clean the site, basically. It was a mess. But we would obviously have a site ready-made. So the only cost to run an event on a Sunday was just security.
Yeah.
So again, none of these ideas were mine, they were all Will's. But Will was like, why don't we just do an event on a Sunday? Because it won't cost us much to do. Obviously, Cambridge is has a slightly older demographic.
Yeah.
And so we thought, wouldn't it be much easier to put something on for this demographic? Who often, it's a demographic that they don't have as many events to go to throughout the year. Everybody's always catering for the kids. So I think that first year we thought, why don't we just book Sister Sledge? You know what I mean? And so booked those guys. I think we did. It was actually really weird. The growth was pretty much identical to Strawberries and Cream. It was a 800 first year, 2.5 year two. We just did it 2 weeks ago. We had Friday night Grace Jones, Saturday night Lionel Ritchie, Sunday night Kool and the Gang, and that was 22,000 people across 3 days. So that now is arguably bigger than Strawberries and Cream. But yeah, I guess was just created as a way for us to
use that venue,
minimize costs really. Yeah. And Sony took both under the umbrella.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we haven't even touched on your A&R yet.
Yeah.
So, let's just flip back to A&R.
Yeah.
So, obviously, that's all about finding the artist, finding what you think is going to be fresh and hot, tapping it, bringing it through, creating the music that you think is going to work, finding the right producers, the right, the right mix. How does that work in your head? Is it something when you're like, you listen to someone, you're like, okay, I know that person is for me and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. What's your thought process behind that?
Yeah. Well, the way that I look at it is, and I don't know if this is a good analogy, I look at it as a jigsaw puzzle. And if you put all the pieces together of a jigsaw puzzle, you've got Stormzy headlining Glastonbury. And that's what I want. I want to be working with artists that are of that size and level of success and impact. And I guess all those little individual jigsaw pieces are different skill sets that make up said artist, whether it's Stormzy or Adele, whoever. So vocal ability, data will always be something, whether people admit it or not, how many streams they're doing, socials, writing ability, all of that type of stuff. So attitude, ambition, there's loads. Yeah. And I think the way that I try and analyze it every day is like, can I identify what jigsaw pieces this artist has? Can I identify maybe what jigsaw pieces this artist doesn't yet have? And do I think I can add value in assisting that artist reaching that Glastonbury headliner goal? And if I can, then I'm diving in, persuading them to come hang out with us. And if not, then it's not right. But I think that's the way to look at it. I would never I'm focused on one thing. I'm trying to see if you can have that star package, basically.
Has that skill set, have you developed that skill set?
Totally.
And is it constantly being refined?
Totally. You develop the skill set with experience and age and being told no. I remember I always say when I was at Columbia, I must have put forward 150 artists in my first year and none of them got signed. And I was fuming. I couldn't understand it. I was like, why? Like, this artist is 100% the best thing I've ever heard since Bob Marley. And like, you learn, right? And thank goodness I had great presidents and great mentors to help me with that. And then also the actual market just changes all the time. Like when I started, I was going through blog pages more. I was going through radio a lot more. So I'd listen to the Annie Mac every Friday without fail. I don't do that anymore. I spend more time on TikTok and Instagram and Spotify than I do on BBC Introducing, for example. So I think you've constantly got to be aware of how the market is changing and then constantly refining what those jigsaw pieces might look like. So for your if you had like 100% of your time,
yeah, would you say that 60% is social, 30% is gigs, or how do you break that down to find artists, or is it just forever evolving? This week it's social, next week I'm at gigs.
Yeah, I don't do many gigs.
Okay.
Annoyingly, the reason I don't do many gigs is because it's become so competitive now that things are getting signed before the artist has had the chance to do a show, which is good and bad in my opinion. I remember before it was like a 3-4 month process. You would sign an artist, so you would often have a chance to go and see them play live, and you'd go to the gig and they'd be like 25 A&R standing there, and it was super weird, and you know, we all knew each other and waved but pretend not to see each other, whereas now you're getting things signed in 72 hours, so you're taking a lot more risk on because you don't have a chance to see the gig. But I guess every A&R I think has their way of finding new stuff. My thing is I like being outside. So it's not necessarily gigs, but I'll go to events. So I'll go to J Huss's album launch party on Wednesday, and at that party you'll meet his producer TSB, and he'll tell you that he's working with a new artist who's incredible, and that didn't happen, but theoretically. I find that and word of mouth and being in the world and in the right places amongst the right artists and the right producers, really good things usually come to the surface there. So
is there anyone that you've signed that's gone really well, or is there anyone that you've signed or that they've struggled?
Yeah.
Like, what I'm trying to say is, like, I know of a few artists that they were like, they should have blown and they didn't because for whatever reason, someone's attitude, someone's, you know, had mental issues, things going on in their world that they couldn't control. Is there anything that happens that you've had anything like that?
Definitely.
And how do you, like, because you then have to mentor them.
Yeah.
Or to a certain degree, if they can be mentored.
Yeah, yeah.
And how do you go about addressing that?
I think you learn on the job. I think it's the worst. I've had loads of artists that it's not ended well. They parted ways with the label. Other things have happened. You're often the same age as the artist, or at least I was. So I don't know how much advice I could be giving. Or the way that I look at it is, can I be a support? I take my job exceptionally seriously, but not just from a music focus. I think the way that I look at my job is, how can I support artists to get the music to a level where it's ready to be consumed by the world. And that's not just about sitting with them in the studio and making sure that the middle eight is right. I think that's how can you support artists in life, because if they're not supported in all areas, that music won't be ready. So I take that really seriously, and I think you have to be in it to win it. And also, I think it's hard, their job. So if I can support that, there's a lot with the music industry I don't think is right or fair or good, which I'm sure is like a conversation for another time. But if I can help an artist who ultimately is the reason why we're all employed and all paid to get to the point that they want to and realize their ambition, whether that means I'm up at 4 a.m. on a Sunday morning helping them with something that's got nothing to do with music, I think that's what we should be doing. Yeah.
And do you feel like record labels are being more proactive to people's needs if they are struggling, or do you find that you have to sit there and beat that drum to make sure that they understand this is an amazing artist, but they're going through something, let's support them?
I think yes and no. I think definitely since and I can only speak from my personal experience, but I think it's amazing to see in my building at least how many more places there are on the building to talk about things that are difficult inside or outside of work. It's amazing. I think with the artists, it's tricky because they're 1, 2, 3 steps removed from that building. So if they have an issue going on in their real life, I don't know if necessarily the X division in the building is where they're going to pick up the phone and call. The people who are often closest to the artists are the A&Rs. So in answer to your question, yes, there are great things in the building, but I'd also feel like there will be things that maybe might not reach the building, and therefore it's important for us as individuals to make sure that we're supporting. And that's all it is. I'm not giving myself a pat on the back. I'm not saying that we're any more important than anyone. I just think that, our job should be to support those artists. That's what makes those buildings tick, and we have to remind ourselves of that. Yeah,
because I think, especially for men, we have a lot more problems where we haven't been able to, not allowed to speak about them, or we weren't allowed to speak about them. We had to be really strong and be very manly. And I think now more and more people are like, actually, you don't have to be really manly. If you're struggling, you can just say what you're feeling and it's okay.
100%.
And I think we should always be championing that in whatever shape or form it takes. I guess I have a question for you. You probably get asked this a lot, but your younger self, you, what advice would you have now to that person that was coming through the ranks, that was doing the events, that was studying, and what would your advice be?
I think it would be to take on, and let me phrase it correctly. I love the kids now that I see who have 4, 5, 6 revenue streams, and not because of the revenue. I like the fact that it opens their networks to eventually where they're going to get to in 20 years' time. I didn't realize at the time when I did A&R that actually so much of my A&R was being benefited from the fact that I had these festivals. I was oblivious to it at the time. I probably wouldn't even have got my job if it wasn't for the fact I was doing those festivals. So whenever if I was to meet my younger self, I would probably tell myself to start if I had the time, manage as well. Get into publishing, because I think that those networks and what you learn are so key and open so many doors that the people I look at now that I really aspire to be, I look at them that they were managers and A&Rs and publishers, and then when, you know, the incredible job role came up that required all 3 of those skills, they had them. So yeah, I think the days of the office 9 to 5, for me at least in this space, I think are maybe a bit over. I would really recommend to my younger self and other young people to get out there and try those things, because I think that's it all grows and develops you as a person.
Do you have a specific type of job that you'd like to do?
Me?
Like, is it like, like the future? Is it like, I want to run the label?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, I would love to run the label, man. I say it confidently with my chest, and I love it. I love record labels. I think that they, when done correctly, are incredible places to scale and change people's lives and everybody involved in that person's life. So I want to keep studying, keep learning, keep contributing, and hopefully, you know, be able to do what I love, which is music, and work with some incredible people.
Do you still study?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us a bit more about what you're still doing studying-wise.
Yeah, well, the first thing I do is study music all the time. You've got to be listening to music at all times, whether you like it or not. Study the market. I'm obsessed with what 15 to 25-year-olds, how they're engaging and consuming with music, because that changes every 6 months, to be honest. I'm seeing artists blow up on Twitch. I'm seeing artists blow up on Be Real with songs. You know, all of those things I'm interested in, because I think you can have the world's greatest song or the world's greatest artist, and if you haven't figured out how to get to the world, it's pointless. So I'm really interested in the market, and then for me personally, I want to understand more of the business and the legalities. I'm still a bit confused at the difference between this royalty and that royalty, and you know, as I said, I never managed anyone, and that's a regret of mine, because I think when you manage someone and you're on the other side, those things you need to understand really quickly, because that's the money that's going into your pocket. I didn't need to understand that because we had Sony lawyers who did. So I'm trying to study that a bit more now, and just grow and become hopefully a better A&R.
Yeah, we had a young lady that was on Azure on the podcast, and she was an artist who went through some issues regarding legality and her team and how it wasn't set up, and she also talks about the business side of it and having to learn business. And I think it's always important that we express to people that there's no harm in to keep learning. Like, I'm still doing it. I'm always trying to work out what's next, or how does that person think, or what's going on here, and how do I sit in that, and how do I help that person grow and develop. So I think it's always important to study.
Definitely.
And I don't mean studies in like, oh my God, I went back to uni. I mean, just basically studying what's going on out with people and trying to help people 100%. All the time.
And I don't even look at it as studying. I'm just so obsessed with it. If anything, I get annoyed because I want to study some other things. I want to read some books. I'm trying to learn a language. But I just ending up going back to, and you can ask my missus, I'm like, have you seen this new feature on TikTok? Oh my God, if we did this and that, you know what I mean? But I love it. I'm so desperate to, contribute with my artists and support. And if I can come up with a new idea over the weekend and it takes 3 hours of studying, then I'll be doing that.
It's amazing. And so Cookies and Cream is taking a bit of time out while it's ready to launch new stuff.
I like strawberries and cream, but cookies and cream.
Cookies and cream. Do you know what?
Might be a separate
and there's another night, Cookies and Cream.
Yeah, there is.
So tell me a bit about, so you're just going to take a back step.
Yeah.
Because that does help mentally as well, because it is a big, like, when you're putting that event on. It's a hype when you start. Obviously, when you're midway through and you're getting towards the end of it, and it's like, right, how many tickets have we sold? So we're in between that gap that you have.
What am I doing?
Well, yeah, do you go on holiday, or do you be like, do you know what? sometimes when you're really in the thick of it, you can't really give yourself any TLC.
Yeah.
How do you give yourself that TLC?
How do I rest?
Yeah, and just care for yourself. Like.
Yeah, I'm not the best at it, and I need to get better at it. I'm doing a holiday next week in Ibiza. Phone will be switched off. I've promised everyone. But my thing, which I'm like works for me, gym, non-negotiable, pretty much. Apart from if I've had a big night the night before, but that is an hour when my phone's pretty much off. Time to be. I find like a lot of the day you're not really alone, are you? So that I didn't realize. I thought I was working my body, but I'm probably working my mind at the same time. So gyms are non-negotiable. I love sport. The weekend I try and just watch some football. My missus I've turned her into an Arsenal fan, so we try and go to the games. Church, family. That's about it. Amazing. Really. I don't really go outside of those 4 things, but they work for me. And as long as I can keep that consistently going. I notice when things are getting tricky, it will often be because I've been out on 6 benders in a row, I've stopped training, I'll start getting a bit stressed out. Or, you know, I've not gone to church, or I've not seen my family for 3 months, I start to get. So I've worked out that those 4 things can drive me through whatever work brings me.
And have you always gone to church? Has that always been a constant in your life? Or
No.
Did you come in and come out?
Come in and come out. 0 to 18 by force. Thanks, Mum and Dad. 18 to 28, absolutely nowhere near it. Saturday night was out till 6 a.m. without fail. 9 a.m. church service wasn't happening. And then I think last year, funnily enough, I was living by myself, and I just found a church nearby, and I just felt like it was something that I wanted to explore independently of my parents. And I'm annoyed that actually I missed 10 years, to be honest. It's become really important. But yeah, everybody's got their thing. But for me, those are my 4 things that I've got to, I have to keep reminding myself how important they are, because if I don't focus on them, I notice that I always call it my equilibrium. It goes off very quickly.
You become unbalanced, unhinged.
Yeah, very quickly.
Because this life can pull you into different directions, and before you know it, you're in one path that you didn't realise where you were.
Yeah.
And how you got there, you don't even know.
Yeah.
But you're actually there.
You don't notice it because it's gradual. I'll miss one church, or you know what I mean, or I'll work all weekend, no time to relax and watch any sport or anything, and then it builds up. So
yeah, I find that with recovery, if you're not doing it, then all of a sudden you're not doing it. You're doing everything, and your body's telling you the reason why you're annoyed is because you're not doing the things that help you relax. So we need to relax,
100%.
but we sometimes don't know, or we're too manly, or whatever it may be. We just
100.
keep going.
Well, it's funny because my dad used to say, and it always used to make me laugh, but like his like thing as to why he felt his career went well in football was like he would train, he would eat food at 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. whenever he came back from training, douse it in salt because apparently that helps with his cramps, I don't know, and he'd sleep. He was like, that's it. He was like, all of his mates were out at the club smoking. He was like, I just slept and trained, and he was like, it allowed me to recover so I could train better and become better. And he always just said to me from 10 years old, if you don't get your recovery right, you can't give your best when you need to. So that's something that I forgot for a little minute, and I'm trying to just bring back into my life.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Right, I feel like that's really where I wanted to go with this conversation. Yeah. It's kind of hit the points that I wanted to discuss, and I think for me, what's been important today is just I've only heard about you and your story, and I've seen you, and it's really nice to get it down and for people to listen. So thank you very much.
Not at all. Thank you for having me as well. Like I've heard a lot. I did research into you, and I heard a lot about you. So next time I want to do this the other way around and ask you loads of questions.
You're more than welcome. I feel like I'm going to come over and give you a cuddle now. Man cuddle.
Oh, man.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Not at all.